I thought your jumpers had little cues on. I thought they were like it was like a Quevedo jumper.
To make some advertisement.
Yeah, to get some merch done. Right, I'll do a quick intro. Hello and welcome back to Vintage Wine and Port. Today we have a very special interview with the wonderful Oscar Quevedo from Quevedo. You can see some of the wonderful products behind me here, and we are here with the man himself. Hello, Oscar. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Andre. Thank you for the invitation to participate in your episodes.
Thank you for having us. Where are you at the moment? We can see some wonderful barrels behind you. What is your current location?
So I am in the cellar of our winery, underground, about 4 or 5 meters underground, and we are based in São João da Pesqueira, which is the geographic center of the Douro wine region.
So you're literally right in the heart of it.
Yes.
In the heart of your cellars, in the heart of the Douro. That's fantastic. And you were saying before, and we're having a little chat, this is quite a busy time for you. It's quite a delicate time for a lot of the vines. Are you out there personally as well amongst all your workers?
Yeah, so I woke up early in the morning to go out and see what people are doing out in the vineyards. We are basically performing 3 different tasks. We have one team pulling off the weeds that are competing with the little vines that we have. So those weeds, we need to take them off. This is a vineyard that is around our winery. We have been growing it organic, so we cannot spray any herbicides or chemicals to control the weeds. Everything is mechanical or made by hand. At this point, because they are so small and fragile, we need to do it by hand. So this one team, we have about 12 people, if I'm not wrong, today doing that. Then we have another team that is putting the new shoots of the vines within 2 wires to protect them against wind or heavy rain. As they are very tender and fragile, they can easily break. And those are the shoots that are going to give us the grapes in September and October. So we need to protect them and make sure that they are not they're not going to create any or if there is wind, they are supported by the wires in between them. And then we have a third team of 5 people that are performing the pruning in our organic olive grove. You know that since 10, 15 years ago, when the production of olive oil became very intensive in the south of Europe, south of Portugal, south of Spain, and everything is mechanical, it has been very hard for us in the Douro, where we have hilly land, to plant olive trees and be able to have an economic profit out of it, because the production is relatively low and everything is also made by hand. So we decided my father decided to convert the olive grove to organic production back in 2005. So it gives us a new angle to talk to consumers that are available to spend a few more euros or pounds in a bottle of olive oil. So these 5 guys, these are already, people very experienced, all above 50 years of age, and they know how to prune olive tree, which is not very simple, because you need to know which branches are going to give you just wood and leaves for the olive to breathe, and which others are going to bring you olives. So you need trained and experienced people to do that. And it's great when you go out there and you see the local shepherd with a sheep eating all the weeds and fertilizing it at the same time. It's beautiful. You Fantastic. Can see that everything is like makes sense with this.
Yeah. The full life cycle is there. That's wonderful. And to go back to the grapes specifically, it's obviously quite a delicate and important time for you right now. Is there any indication at this stage? What do you know about the harvest from the current state of the vines? Is there anything you can glean?
Yeah, well, the Douro has been, and I guess most of the regions in the world, we are under a big pressure of temperatures. So it's obvious for us that the average temperature has been moving up during the last 2 or 3 decades. So our goal, our challenge is to make sure that the vines are prepared to handle that. So we need to, on one side, irrigate those places that are where the vines are younger and they are not so used to and prepared to handle high temperature and drought on one side. And on the other side, for those that are older, you need to reduce the expected production. So if you have a very hot summer, they are not going to die of just too high temperatures, and they can still resist. The more the vegetation they have, more shoots they have, more grapes they produce, harder it is for the vine to finish the grape cycle. And if it does finish the grape cycle, it's gonna produce grapes of lower quality. So you prefer to produce less, but you know that the vine have higher chances of producing a complete, fully ripe grape bunch. So this is the major challenge that we have right now. So far, 2021 has been a warm year, warmer than the average, but also with high level of rainfall. And rain is a scarce element that we have in the Douro. To give you an idea, we have about 600 millimeters of rain in a year, which is, it's okay, it's fine. The problem is that it comes concentrated between November and April. And then typically during the summertime, you don't have any rain. Or you may have a little bit, but not enough really to fully irrigate the vines. So for now, we have a lot of water reserves in the soil. So I would say that it's very good for the vines. They can produce grapes of really good quality and finish the cycle. But for that, we need to avoid temperature peaks, like temperatures above 40 Celsius for a long period of time during the weeks prior to the harvest. So far, it's okay.
Well, it's quite a balancing act you have to complete every year. How long have you been juggling that at Quevedo? Can you talk a bit about the history and the start of Quevedo, the origins?
Sure. So we start producing grapes in the family in 1889, but we were growing the grapes and making the port to sell to the merchants. And this stayed like we were like grape growers for almost a century. We were not able to export directly from the Douro until 1986, which is the year that Portugal joins the European Union. And the European Union says that it's no longer allowed to export only from the area of Porto or Vila Nova de Gaia. You are allowed to export also from the Douro. And this is the moment, it's a critical moment when you have an explosion of small family wineries like us and many others that start bottling the port that they were before selling to the merchants. Well, we didn't do a great job in the end because we still have about 90% of the top 5 merchants, bottlers, exports. So 90% of the port is exported by 5 merchants, which is, I mean, it leaves 10% left for 70 producers. So it's not that much. But I think that we have our own style. We have our own way of approaching it. We have a generous area of production. We have over 100 hectares of vines. A lot of what we are bottling is coming from our own vineyards. As I told you before, at this moment we have over 20 hectares are under organic production. So we have this commitment with organic production. And as a house style, what I would really say that defines us, that we make different from the others, is the fact that we prefer ports a little bit on the drier side. And once I asked my grandfather, why was that? And he told me that sugar works like a makeup. It's like a makeup. You know, it's going to hide the bad things, but also hides the good things. And he told me, if you believe in your grapes, if you believe in the fruit that you are producing, then let the sugar go a little bit lower. Ferment the must for a few more hours. And you are going to get less sugar and more of the expression of the fruit. And that's what we have been doing for all this time. So we are a little bit on the drier side of port. Our ports typically sit around 80 to 90 grams of residual sugar, whilst the market average is probably a little bit above 100 grams per liter.
Fantastic. So yeah, that's really interesting to kind of hear about your house style and your philosophy to winemaking. Obviously, you've inherited a bit of that from generations of Quevedos. Is there a personal what is your kind of personal philosophy aside from your family beliefs? Is there something that you've brought in as you've learned and developed over the years?
Well, as we have been growing in our business, we have been trying to also make sure that the community that is around us is benefiting from it. Being our employees or the farmers that are next to us or other members of our family that are also involved in the grape growing and not in the winemaking part. So we have been trying to, to have the local chef that is coming to our vineyard to have food for the sheep throughout the year. We have been trying to create conditions for the young people in our little village to stay and don't have to migrate or immigrate to find jobs where they're more like skilled. We try to buy grapes from local farmers that are surrounding us, which terroirs are very similar and they fit under our own philosophy. So I think that it's a lot of what I like to do is to feel that we are part of a community, that we are only successful if everyone in the community around us is able to be in a better situation. And we cannot measure the success of our business and the wellness of our community by the average income. We have to make sure that the lower income people are also growing and catching up with the rest, because we don't want a society that is very divided. So we try to make sure that if we can help, everyone I always say this, everyone has an opportunity to work with us if they want. Everyone deserves an opportunity. And I really hope that those that want to take that opportunity use it properly and commit to our philosophy and can perform something in our company, being in the bottling line, down here in the cellar, topping up barrels, out in the vineyards, helping with a weed control, or driving a tractor, whatever it is. But try to make sure that we are part of a community. I grew up in this village of 2,000 people, which is a very small town. It's actually a town. So I know many people here, and most of them I played football with them or went to school with them. So I think it's our it's almost mandatory to make sure that we grow together.
That's so brilliant to hear. And how long have, obviously it's been in your family for generations. What was your kind of introduction to winemaking? Were you involved as a child? What were you kind of doing when you were younger?
Well, I remember I probably started coming to the winery when I was 7 years old, and actively helping with something, turning on or off a pump, opening, closing a valve, performing relatively simple things that a 7-year-old child can do. My introduction to port actually happened before that. It happened when my grandfather would tell me to come to get a cookie freshly made by my grandmother, and he would always have it having a glass of port. So he would ask me, "Do you want to have a sip?" Yeah, sure. So I would have a sip of his glass of port wine, and had my one cookie or two. But I remember that one day I shared this on the table of my parents, and I told today, Grandpa gave me a little bit of port to try with my cookie. And my mother, she didn't say anything. She just looks at my father, and she was the way she was looking at him. I understood there was something there. And for the next several years, I never had again the port glass with a cookie that my grandmother had made. And I realized that maybe sometimes you have to filter the information, and you, even with your parents, you cannot tell them everything.
Mhm.
And but that was my introduction to port. I was probably, I don't know, 5-6 years old when I start having a little sip of port at my
Nice.
grandparents' house. Later on, so I was helping at the winery when I could. I would also go out to the vineyards and help with the harvest when until the school started, which was typically mid-September. So I could do 1-2 weeks of out in the with a picking team and make some money that my parents would pay me for that. But I always had in my mind that I never wanted to be in this business. Maybe when I kind of retired or got an early retirement from my other job that I would like to have, probably as a banker, and I could combine fishing with winemaking. Well, it lasted. So I worked for 5 years as a banker, and then my grandfather, the same that was introduced me to port tasting, passed away at the age of 93. And he was actually my best friend. I had such a strong relation with him that it was. I really felt his death. So I decided to. I told my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. We were working in Madrid, and I told her, I wanna go back to Portugal. I wanna help my family business. And when I decided to tell this to my father, I still remember. So it was pre-lunch, and I thought, let me tell this to my mother and my father before lunch, so then I can tell everyone at lunch with my sister and all the rest of the family. So there were just the three of us, mom, dad, and me. And I told him, I would like to leave my job in Madrid and come to help in the winery. And my father just said, okay, end of conversation. I said, wow, I was not expecting someone to set up a party with fireworks, but something a bit more warmth would be welcome. But that's what he said. And I think that the message was, if you want to come, you have to be sure that you want to come, but don't expect us to, that you are going to be the king of the show. And it was not like that. So I had to work as hard as anyone else, and slowly try to change what I thought it would be worth to change. Eventually, my father decided to retire 6 years later. 6 years later, I started in 2009. So he retired in 2015, if I'm not wrong.
I can't imagine you as a banker, Oscar. You've got far too much passion and creativity to be sat behind a banker's desk. But so yeah, I'm very glad you're in the winery at Quevedo, and to bring it to the present day. Then, so obviously you've been a long family connection and a more recent kind of rejoining back into the family business. So the latest vintage declaration for 2019. Can you give us a bit of information about that? What the process was like for you, and what we can expect from the 2019 vintage?
Well, 2019 was a year with a relatively generous production that we were not really used to the years before. So to be able to make the vintage port, we needed to go to those places where the vines are older and the production is lower, so they have more concentration and complexity. It was a year where the summer was very dry. It was hard for the vines also to fully perform the cycle, but we end up with a very balanced wines and really fresh, well balanced with acidity. So I think it's going to be it's a wine that, in my opinion, is a port that goes more towards the fruitier side than the spicier side. But we were able to make about 5,000 liters that we will divide between 75s, halves, and few magnums of a port that is going to be remembered for many decades.
Brilliant. So yeah, well worth checking out if you've not tried any Quevedo port before. Obviously, go check it out. But especially the 2019 vintage comes highly recommended. And a look ahead to the year we've just had, 2020. Obviously, a very different year. For lots of different reasons. What do you have any inside track on the 2020 vintage and what we might be able to expect?
2020 was a year where we had a lower production, very low yields. It was a year where the grapes that were harvested at the right time were beautiful, balanced, really fresh. But there was a moment in time towards the mid of the harvest when Touriga Franca, which is the most planted grape variety in the Douro, start getting raisin in raisins. Summer was very dry, and the vine just entered in a cycle, in a mode of almost survival. So it started taking the water that was left in the berries to its own consumption. So if you were able to harvest peak prior to that moment when the Touriga Franca changed, you were able to make port of very good quality, excellent quality, outstanding. Otherwise, would be very difficult to balance this raisiny port, because you lose the balance, you lose the acidity, you lose the freshness. You start getting your berries at very high, with a lot of alcohol, or with a lot of sugar that turns out in a lot of alcohol, but in balance in terms of tannins and freshness, and also acidity. So it was a tricky harvest. Not everyone was prepared for that, I guess. So I think the experience of those that have been out in the vineyards for many time was paid off, as the moment of the picking was very, very important. Otherwise, you were not able to make a very high quality port.
So a very tight window to operate in. That sounds
very
stressful anyway, but especially under the pandemic conditions, how did you have to adapt and change things with everything going on with coronavirus?
Well, it was a nightmare. Between the masks and make sure that people were enough far away from each other. We had one case of COVID really at the beginning of the harvest, of someone that was working in the winery, not out in the vineyards. We were lucky enough to have 0 cases after that so far in all our team, and we have performed some measures that, the sanitary measures that everyone recommends. I think luck is also playing a very important part in all this, but was very, very tricky. I think we were lucky because you have 2 different ways of doing your work out in the vineyards. You can have contractors that come for a week or 2 with a big number of people. They do that task and they go for another vineyard from another company. Or you can have full-time people, which is the case of what we do. We have 35 people that are employed full-time, and those are always available. So those that were relying on contractors, there was not enough contractors out in September to pick grapes, because everyone was phoning them. I want to start. But they only have like 10 or 20 people. They don't have 2,000 people available. So there was not enough pickers to pick all the grapes in the door in those 2 or 3 weeks, in that window that you were talking. So we were lucky because we have our 30 or 35 people that were available to us to perform the picking at the time that we thought it was right. So I understand that it's very convenient to have contractors that they just go around. You can actually kind of relax for 2 weeks in a month, and then you ask them to come the other 2 weeks. But I think it's the old way of having your full-time people that are committed to your vineyards, to the tasks, and that they feel responsible for the final production, the final result of all this.
Mhm.
It's very, very important. So I mean, it was another lesson that the Dodo gave us last year.
For sure, yeah. Everyone's invested into Quevedo because, as you say, there's a community and a family feel there. So yeah, lucky you had everyone on hand. But yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to be in that stressful situation myself. So I'm glad you're through it, and hopefully looking forward to a much more stress-free 2021. Touch wood. With the future, yeah, I think you're thought of as one of the kind of innovators in the port world. You've got lots of different projects on the go at all times. You're introducing some port bonds into your production. Can you tell us a bit about that, how that's going to work, and when it's going to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact that we are a small winery, a family winery, you get more and more consumers that like to visit us, like to taste our ports, and that want to create a link between their household, their family, and ours. And with the time, we started having people that were kind of asking us to reserve their case of vintage port in advance. They would phone us, they would email us and said, can you put a case aside? Can you put this? Can you put that? And we just decided, well, let's get them a certificate that they can be, they can be comfortable that they will pay in advance, but in the end, they are going to get the certificate and some updates from us throughout this period between the purchase of their vintage port bond and the delivery of the bottles. And I think this is just part, it's an extension of what is our reality. And the consumers want to connect more with us, have more of our ports, and want to reserve in advance ports that many times get out of stock or just finish. So it's just a formalization of something that we hope many in the UK are going to want to create this relation with us, and being this to celebrate the birth of a child or a wedding or something other landmark that they want to mark with something unique.
Yeah, it must be quite hard sometimes because you're kind of always working in terms of bottling and actually getting products out, you're kind of always a year and a half, 2 years behind. So it's nice to have something very immediate. And yeah, it sounds like a really cool thing that people can get involved with, and to have that formal certificate. Yeah, as you say, just builds a great connection. And you say about connecting with customers and building that relationship. You've recently opened a new physical shop in Porto. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So you know that I was born in the Douro. I lived here, and this is where my heart is. But we only get a small fraction of the visitors that come to the north of Portugal, up here in the Douro and in our winery. We are about 2 hours away from Porto. So we thought that if we were able to talk, to meet, to discover, to present our ports to those majority of visitors to the city of Porto that don't have the time or the interest or whatever it is to come all the way up to the Douro and start talking to them about our ports. If you get them first introduced to our ports, then they may come back later at some point. And come back means come back to our tasting room in Vila Nova de Gaia in Porto, to our winery, but also to our customers that are split among different countries. So it's a way of creating bridges with people that we don't know yet, but we want to know. And we got this opportunity to buy a place down by the Douro River in Vila Nova de Gaia. It's it's actually an old cooperage where until the 1950 barrels port casks were produced. Eventually, the oak and the barrels business got under pressure because of the arrival of the stainless steel tanks. So they decided to change to the manufacturing of wood boxes, and eventually they just went out of business. So it was a place that was closed for many years, and it opened about 10 years ago with the owner of the previous owner of that place that was selling our ports there, but actually we're not controlling the place. It was more like a third party presenting our ports, and we were not really comfortable with that, and we decided to purchase the place and being us to control and to manage how our brand and our ports should be served.
Brilliant. So if you're in Porto, well, first of all, do take a trip up the Douro Valley and go to Quevedo themselves. But if you don't have the time, or even if you do have the time, go check out the shop in Porto as well. It sounds like a fantastic string to your bow. You're doing so much, Oscar. It's brilliant to see all these different projects and offshoots that you're doing. And one of the things that we're working with you on is virtual tastings, online tastings. We've got 2 events coming up soon. I've got some of the bottles in front of me here for the Kalita vertical. There's the 2004 Kalita port. Well, first of all, it's worth noting these are a bit bigger than some of the other tasting bottles that you might get. So this will easily serve 2 people. So you can get 1 pack and share it between 2 of you. But to kind of touch on virtual tastings generally, how have you found them? Do you think there's something that will continue even after the pandemic?
Well, I really hope so. I think that this possibility of interacting with people, it started before the pandemic. So it really increased a lot during the last year, but I hope that it does not really stop, because we have so many things to share. We have so many ports that we would love people to try, to discover. We are not talking about those, the supermarket ports that you have 2 or 3 different categories and full stop. No, we are talking about the small nuances across barrels, same port in different barrels, or same barrel that aged different ports throughout these years, or a lineup of a vertical of the same port produced from the same vineyard but coming from different vintages. So you can see that what nature made different, not really us, but what nature performed out in the vineyards to bringing more rain or less rain, higher temperatures, less temperature, and what resulted different. Or I don't know, one of I think we are going to have a super cool tasting, which is the 20-year-old Tony. And you will see what's behind the scenes. What's it's like visiting our winery, coming with us in the day when you are blending, and we are trying to understand which combination of ports in which percentages works best to make a certain port final blend. It's like I always like to give this as an example of a conversation among friends. If your friends have the same sports team, the same political party, the same religion, if you won't think the same, there is really nothing to talk about, because you know exactly how the other guys are thinking and behaving. But if you have someone that is from a team A or team B, and the religion 1 or religion 2 and the political part, then you have matter for a great conversation and great discussions among you all. If your port is coming from only that parcel and always made the same way and the same procedure, you may end up with something very deep and concentrated. But maybe you'll end up with a better result if you are bringing more varieties, if you are bringing new barrels, if you are bringing new vineyards. And that's our job here. It's actually my sister's job, Claudia. she loves to be in front of the camera. So she hates to be in front of the camera. She loves to be behind the camera. And you may not see her, but I will try to transmit that. What's their understanding? What's our understanding as a family business of a blend of different barrels of port wine? And we are going to do this with a 20-year-old port, which is already something of high quality.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if you're watching this in the future, the 20-year-old tasting may have already sold out, but what we're doing is you're getting a 20-year-old tawny to taste, and then the constituent parts, so you can blend your own tawny. One which is further in the future, so you still have an opportunity to buy, hopefully, is the Kalita Vertical, which are these bottles here. So go check that out at vintagewineandport.co.uk. And speaking of Claudia, we actually have her namesake right here, the Claudia's Quevedo white wine there. It's got far too bright to properly focus, but yeah, that's thank you so much for joining me today, Oscar. We're really looking forward to both the tasting events, especially the tawny one. That really does sound quite exciting, and yeah, something entirely different. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to say?
My pleasure, Andrew, and I really hope to see you soon.
Yes, I hope to see you soon too. And when it's all blows over, I'll make sure to make the trip up to the Douro Valley. Thank you so much. Take care. Cheers.
You too. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye, Andrew.